Hello and welcome to this week's Pop Culture Powerhouse. We've
Yes,
got two beardy, wizardy fellows.
we
They're
do.
basically the same guy.
Yeah, and it's not
Gandalf
me.
versus Dumbledore. This is the before image.
This is them in
um,
their younger days.
exactly. Yes, the two most
Iconic wizards.
the two most famous wizards for
Other than,
people our age, I'd say.
yeah, I think the only other that is maybe as iconic would be Merlin.
He's not stood up as well in the
No, he hasn't
in the
long
modern
term.
era.
But people might try and argue that. But for our modern era and our, like you say, our generation, Gandalf and Dumbledore are like the two
The
heads.
goats.
Yeah.
They've definitely influenced what a wizard looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Proper forcing them into that box of white dude with really long white beard and hair.
Yeah.
For sure.
But we have six
As
categories.
always, yeah, exactly. We've got 6 categories. As always, iconicness, individuality, quality of adaptations, legacy, relatability, and personal preference. So let's get right into it.
I mean, both icons.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel one slightly more iconic,
Okay.
trying to take our British bias out of things.
Okay.
I feel like Gandalf globally is slightly more iconic as wizard than Dumbledore is. I think Dumbledore is very iconic, but like a lot of people with Harry Potter obviously think of the trio and Dumbledore and Hagrid.
I think if you were to do a completely random survey of 100,000 people, more of them would know Dumbledore than Gandalf.
I don't know.
Harry Potter is a bigger franchise to a casualer audience than Lord of the Rings. I think this is one of them ones where our nerd is actually biasing us more than our Britishness.
I don't know. Because it's like, you've got to look at it as like other countries where Lord of the Rings, I feel, is well established globally as a IP. Harry Potter definitely more recently has got bigger, but I still feel like Gandalf is like the head wizard of what people think of.
How many people do you know that have read Lord of the Rings?
Not many.
How many people do you know that have read Harry Potter?
Only slightly more than not many.
Exactly. And we know
But we're British.
We know the Harry Potter films did better than the Lord of the Rings films. Commercially. I'm not talking about which were better films and which won more awards. Commercially, the Harry Potter films blew Lord of the Rings out of the water.
I think it's so tough because there's definitely like, we've heard from both actors during their times that like they were mistaken for the other.
Yes, that the films coming out so close together, definitely there will be some people who you'll say Gandalf or Professor Dumbledore and they'll go, same person, no?
Or like they'll see Ian McKellen and be like, oh, you were Dumbledore.
Yeah.
No.
Ian McKellen would have been a brilliant Dumbledore.
He would have been. Unfortunately, the cast was too stacked. We couldn't add another one. It is. I think it is tough because there's obviously British bias. There's obviously our generation was definitely like peak Harry Potter time, whereas like I would say my older sisters and cousins were when the Lord of the Rings films were coming out, and they were a bit older when the Harry Potter, like there's a very fine like margin between which was coming out and like how like the age ranges.
I'm using Google Trends right now
Oh,
to see who searched more.
I think Gandalf memes are more.
Dumbledore over Oh, that's just last day. 1 second. Pause. We're going to go last 5 years. It's a wide berth, I feel.
Yeah.
The average interest over time for the last 5 years for the phrases Gandalf and Dumbledore. Dumbledore 9, Gandalf 4. Their peaks in that time.
Yeah, but which is this? Because with Google, sometimes lower number means higher.
No. It's average interest. So the peak Dumbledore got to in that time was 53. The peak Gandalf got to in that time was 18. In the world map, there is only 2 countries where Gandalf is overall more popular. And that is Italy and a Eastern European country that I'm not familiar with, just based on the map. I genuinely think what's happened here is our nerd has actually biased us more than our nationality. Because in our head, when you think of wizard, we both go Gandalf.
Yeah.
But I think that's us being nerds. The general populace, Professor Dumbledore is so much more well known.
I think it's tough as well because like all my family loved Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. We're so aware of our British bias towards Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That we forgot about our other potential biases.
I do think it's very, like, that obviously makes it seem less close, but I think, it is generally very close.
I do believe so, yes. But I do think Professor Dumbledore is more iconic in a pop culture sense.
Yeah. Maybe.
But I do think more people know "You shall not pass." They just don't know it's Gandalf. I guarantee you there are a bunch of people who know that phrase and they do not realise it's Lord of the Rings or Gandalf. Because that phrase transcended.
Do you know what? I think there's plenty of people, don't know it's either of those things. And then I think there's a lot of people just know, oh, that was in Lord of the Rings, right? But they don't necessarily know who said it.
Yeah.
I agree with that, yeah. Individuality.
They are the same man, you cannot convince me otherwise.
Technically, didn't Merlin, Merlin came before these two.
Yeah, he was a bit kookier, I think.
Well, yeah, but like wizard.
I'd say that these two are pretty kooky.
But it's tough because, they are both just great wizards. But there is some individuality in the sense of like what kind of, how they are portrayed as wizards. Like,
absolutely.
Obviously, Harry Potter, it's all about wands and very visual with their magic and all that side of things. Whereas Gandalf is a bit more mystical with his magic.
Yeah. It is weird because you look at them and like they are two characters of the way they're designed. You're like, yeah, that's a wizard, cool. But they are very unique in some of their idiosyncrasies. Professor Dumbledore's quite an interesting character because he's portrayed as quite a good person. But when you grow up a little bit and look back at the story of Harry Potter, Professor Dumbledore does not come across that well at all.
No.
Gandalf was an interesting character, still is an interesting character. Because there's little bits where you're like, you're a very intelligent, kind of bordering on all-knowing wizard. Why did we not think about this?
Yeah, sometimes like you look back and you're like, you shouldn't have hit. Like Gandalf as a character often put his own fear above things, and then that. But yeah, I think you've got to look at it like surface level from the out. Someone who's like knows of both. They look identical. They are both wizards. The nerds notice the difference of how they are wizards.
Surface level is that Pam in The Office meme. It's like they're the same picture.
Yeah.
But they are. I'd say they're almost closest to two sides of the same coin. Yeah, they're both the grand old wizard that no one really knows a lot about, and they hide things they shouldn't hide. But once you get past that, they are very different, sprawling characters with a lot more nuance.
It's almost like the simplifier is like in fantasy. There's often two ways magic is depicted. One is very mystical and unknown. The other is very logical, practical. With you use items, you have set phrases, and it's like that's how magic is in fantasy. You either write it as a very mystical, unknown thing, or it's a very well-known, understood.
Yes, a science.
Yeah, and they just hit Both sides of that, one each.
Yeah. Quality of adaptations.
I feel like we've got the books, the films.
So Ian McKellen's the only one who's played Gandalf in live action, correct?
Yes.
He played him in The Hobbit, didn't he?
Yeah.
I'm
trying to think if there's anything else, but I don't think.
I mean, so.
Other than technically, though it's not fully confirmed yet, Rings of Power, that's obviously not.
I don't think we can count that yet. And then with Harry Potter and Professor Dumbledore, you've got three different actors.
Was it 3?
Yes. In the first 2 films, you had Richard something. I feel so bad right now. You had Richard Harris for the first 2 films.
Right.
Michael Gambon.
Yeah.
For the rest of the films, and then in Fantastic Beasts, we've had 2 actors as well. You've had Jude Law and Toby Robogoto. I'm not quite sure when that happened, and I've not seen the Fantastic Beasts films, or I've not seen past the first one, and I don't believe he's in the first one.
Right.
So I can't really comment on the quality of that performance. What I would say is, as a child, when I first watched Harry Potter, I did not notice that the Dumbledore actor had changed.
No, neither did I.
Going back watching now, I can see very big differences in the performances. Yeah. But as a child, I didn't notice the change. I do prefer Richard Harris, but he was also playing Dumbledore earlier in the story where you know less about him. So he could play it a bit more mysterious.
Yeah.
When Michael Gambon came in and took over, who also did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
He was playing a character that you do know more about, and therefore you can't be quite as mysterious.
No, you can't.
And of course, the iconic "Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?"
Yeah.
Iconic delivery. Whereas Ian McKellen is just Gandalf personified.
Yeah, it's will be so hard to ever, if they ever need a Gandalf and he's no longer with us, like in years to come, it's going to be so hard to see someone else play that role.
Mm-hmm. Really, really difficult. I would say. I mean, unfortunately, what we've done in the past is said more adaptations of a slightly lesser quality, but overall still good, trumps one phenomenal adaptation.
It's tough.
That's been our rule of thumb.
It is. I would. The tough thing is, it's like I still like the Harry Potter films. It's all one, like, collective adaptation, just like all the Lord of the Rings films are. The only, I guess, like Harry Potter has the Fantastic Beasts added on.
Well, Harry Potter had different script writers, different directors for basically every film, and then Fantastic Beasts was a whole new story altogether. It is definitely difficult. What I would say is, I think Gandalf is quite a complicated character, more so than Dumbledore. So I feel like someone else coming in to do a Gandalf adaptation would struggle more.
Yeah.
And then when you add on the quality of Ian McKellen, who is a true thespian,
yeah,
you're left in a spot where you could have a quite poor adaptation through almost no fault of their own. I think we kind of have to fall on our precedent here.
Also thinking about it, the Hobbit films probably fall into the same realm as the Fantastic Beast ones, of not as strong as the original set of films.
I would say, based on what I've seen and read and heard, I would say that's probably a valid.
Yeah, like, I enjoyed the Hobbit films. There is things that are changed, and it's like, so then you, like you say, you've got different people portrayed Dumbledore. There is more films there. I think you are right, and it ever so slightly leans towards Dumbledore.
Legacy. Now, this one is cut and dry. It's Gandalf. Yeah.
There's one man that can be Gandalf. There is one line that everyone remembers as Gandalf. There's the iconic moment of him returning as Gandalf the White. Like, there's so many moments that he's left into the world from that.
I'm not going to say for certain, because I don't have the historical knowledge to confirm this. But in my head, the way Gandalf is described and portrayed throughout everything has kind of become the basics of describing a wizard. That is legacy incarnate.
Yeah, there's a reason that every fantasy setting, whether it's people playing D&D, people writing new stories, everyone looks back on you say grey-bearded wizard, everyone thinks Gandalf.
Yes.
So, like,
the legacy to me has to be Gandalf, because it's just such a longer period of time to be that culturally significant as well.
I think in situations where, like, you maybe describe a wizard in a school, you might think Dumbledore. But generally speaking, you mention an old wizard, people mentally, whether they want to or not, will think of Gandalf.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So,
relatability.
I relate very strongly with Gandalf and his opinion on never being late and arriving precisely when he means to. It's how I like to live my life.
As I get older, I start to understand Dumbledore's frustration with these children more and more.
Hey, Gandalf also had frustration with the...
Yes. As I deal with you more and more,
nice.
I understand the frustration a Hobbit would have dealing with Gandalf.
Cheers. I take that with the utmost respect.
I don't know who I find more relatable. It's really tricky. I feel like Dumbledore is inherently more relatable. He works a job that we have an understanding of, even if we've never done it. And he is British. So I do think he's inherently more relatable than the Middle-earth high fantasy god wizard thing that is Gandalf.
Yeah, but he is all about wonder and going on adventures and just...
Sorry, when was the last time you left your bedroom?
We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah, talk to me about adventures.
Hey, I've done a lot in my life. I've had a long life.
No, we know that.
I don't know. I think there's parts they both have. I
mean, we just don't particularly relate to old wizards. Because despite my jokes, we are both young.
Do you know what? I think me personally relating, but I see more of like my late granddad in Dumbledore in the way that he told stories and Dumbledore tells tales. Like, not Dumbledore, sorry, Gandalf tells tales like in these like elaborate stories. I think in those terms, like, but then that comes down to how your grandparent was.
Yeah.
I think both are very relatable in those sorts of situations.
They are the kinds of people you kind of want to be in a certain sense.
When I reach that age.
Yeah, obviously Dumbledore has some major flaws, but if I can be like this kind of kooky-ish, in a nice way, old dude who rocks up and goes, "I'm never late. I simply arrive when I must,"
just
and
with a pipe.
Yeah, and then the younger crowd are like, "Tell us the story and let's go cause mischief." I'd be very happy with that life. Personal preference.
I think
Gandalf.
For me, yeah.
Yeah.
People of the show will probably have guessed Gandalf for me and maybe Dumbledore for you because they know.
No, but Gandalf for me as well. I prefer Gandalf.
Yeah, but I think Dumbledore's great, but
yeah, it's a rough one. But let's tot up the process here, because I think overall it's pretty close.
It is.
Iconicness, I think we gave to Dumbledore.
I will allow it to lean to Dumbledore slightly.
Individuality,
I feel it's a draw.
I think needs to be a draw.
Yeah, because they're the same character or two sides of how a wizard is depicted. So it's like,
and also there's a way to like even it up even more. Dumbledore came so much later after so many wizard stories have been written. To feel kind of unique is actually quite difficult. Quality of adaptations, I think, based on the precedent we've set for ourselves, has to go to Dumbledore.
I think it does lean to Dumbledore.
Legacy is Gandalf.
Gandalf.
Relatability, are we calling a draw?
Yeah, or I would maybe lean more Gandalf, but as I get older.
We'll call that. So, how much do you want to fight for Gandalf on the relatability?
Well, here's...
Because I think it's a draw, so if you really, really, really believe it's a Gandalf win, I can concede it. But if you're just kind of a little bit leaning that way, I think it's a draw.
I think people like to believe they relate to Gandalf more.
Okay, I can accept that. So, we have our scores.
Personal preference.
It is... Yeah, I put Gandalf for that Gandalf, already, yeah. Our scores are 3-2 Gandalf. I think that is one of them ones that feels about right. It shows the respect we have for Dumbledore while having the winner win.
Yeah, I think the realistic thing is it is actually a tie, but we need a winner.
Yeah. It's one of them ones where sometimes you do just have to accept that even though on the scoreboard it might be a draw, there is someone who's the winner. And it's almost like an intangibles, isn't it? And that's exactly what it is there. But that is it from us this week on the Pop Culture Powerhouse. Thank you as always for hanging out. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.